I used to think my life was ordinary until I realized I had fallen in love with the one person I was never supposed to want. The cruel joke of it all? She was my mother's closest friend, her trusted partner, the woman who had been in and out of my house for years like family. Her name was Claire. And from the moment I started noticing her not as my mom's confidant but as a woman who made my chest tighten and my pulse quicken, I knew I was ruined. Claire was the kind of woman who turned heads without trying. She wasn't flashy, never the type to drown herself in makeup or loud clothes. She had this understated elegance, always in tailored blazers or casual sweaters that hinted at strength more than seduction. But to me, every glance she gave, every subtle smile, felt like a spark caught in dry grass, threatening to burn everything I had known about love, family, and loyalty. It started small. Late nights when Mom wasn't home, Claire would linger in the kitchen, sipping coffee while I worked on my college essays. She'd ask about my classes, about the books stacked beside me, and before I knew it, we'd been talking for hours. I told myself it was harmless, that I just liked her attention because she listened in a way no one else did. But deep down, something dangerous was growing, and I was helpless to stop it. I remember the night it hit me hardest. Claire had come over after a long day. Her hair was slightly messy, her shirt unbuttoned at the top, and she looked exhausted. She dropped onto the couch with a sigh, and when I asked if she wanted tea, she smiled at me, soft, grateful, with a warmth that made my stomach flip. I brought her the mug, our fingers brushing briefly, and my chest burned. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed that touch over and over, twisting it into something far more intimate than it should have been. The problem was, Claire wasn't just anyone. She was practically family, and my mother trusted her with everything. So when I caught myself staring too long, when my dreams began to feature her in ways that left me flushed and ashamed, I tried to shut it down. I went out with friends, dated boys half-heartedly, tried to bury the truth beneath noise and distraction. But every time I came home and found her sitting at our table, laughing with Mom, sipping wine like she belonged there, it was like being stabbed with a reminder of what I could never have. Or so I thought. The turning point came on a stormy night in March. Mom had gone on a weekend work trip, leaving me alone in the house. Claire stopped by to drop off some files, rain dripping from her coat, her hair damp against her cheeks. I offered her a towel, teasing that she looked like a drowned cat, and she laughed at a sound that felt like lightning striking too close. "Mind if I stay until the rain calms down?" she asked, and of course I said yes. We ended up in the living room, candles flickering because the power had cut out. She wrapped herself in one of Mom's blankets, sipping tea while I sat across from her. The rain hammered the windows, thunder shaking the walls, but all I could hear was her voice, low and soothing, telling stories from her past. At some point I shifted closer. So did she. The space between us shrank until I could feel the heat of her body, smell the faint trace of lavender shampoo in her hair. My heart pounded so loud I was sure she could hear it. And when her hand brushed mine just barely, I didn't pull away. She looked at me then, really looked, and the air thickened with something unspoken. "I shouldn't," she whispered, her voice almost drowned by the storm. But I didn't let her finish. I leaned in, reckless, desperate, and pressed my lips to hers. The kiss was everything I had imagined and nothing I was prepared for. Soft yet electric, hesitant yet hungry. My entire body trembled, caught between guilt and ecstasy, terror and longing. She froze for a moment, then kissed me back, gentle at first, then deeper, as if she too had been fighting this for far too long. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, reality came crashing down. "This is wrong," she murmured, pulling back, her eyes wide with panic. "Your mother. She trusts me. God, what are we doing?" But the damage was done. I touched my lips, still tingling, and whispered, "Tell me you didn't feel it too." She said nothing, just stared at me with a war raging in her eyes before she stood abruptly, muttering that she had to go. The door slammed behind her, leaving me alone with the storm inside and out. The days after were unbearable. Claire avoided me. She still came around for my mom, but she barely looked at me, kept conversations short, cold, professional. It was like she had built a wall overnight, and every time I caught her eyes flicker toward me before she quickly looked away, I felt the ache of something stolen. I told myself it was better this way, that maybe it had been a mistake, a fleeting moment of weakness. But late at night, when I replayed the kiss, the fire it lit inside me refused to die. and I couldn't stop wanting her. Everything reached its breaking point at my mother's birthday party. The house was full of people, laughter and music echoing through the rooms. Claire was there, of course, looking breathtaking in a simple black dress, her hair pinned up elegantly. She smiled at everyone but me. The distance between us was unbearable. So when I slipped outside for air, desperate to escape, I wasn't surprised when she followed. "Why are you doing this?" I demanded, my voice low but sharp. "Doing what?" she replied, though her voice trembled. "Pretending it didn't happen. Pretending you don't feel anything." Her jaw tightened. "I can't feel this, not for you. It's not right." "Maybe it's not right," I whispered, stepping closer. "But it's real." For a heartbeat I thought she'd give in. Her eyes softened, her lips parted, but then she shook her head violently, muttered something about betrayal, and walked back inside. And just like that, I realized this wasn't going to be some fleeting crush. This was war between my heart and the world I lived in. That night, lying awake in my room, I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't walk away from her, even if it meant tearing my life apart. The days that followed my mother's birthday were a battlefield I hadn't expected to survive. Claire's rejection replayed in my mind like a cruel recording. Her voice echoing, "It's not right." But every time I caught her gaze flickering toward me, every time her lips pressed into that conflicted line, I knew she was lying. She was lying to me, to herself, and maybe even to my mom. I hated her for it, and I loved her for it. Both feelings clashed in me, leaving my chest raw. It was a Sunday morning when everything shifted again. I'd been sitting at the kitchen counter with a mug of coffee, scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself. The house was quiet. Mom had gone to brunch with some old college friends. And then the doorbell rang. I didn't expect her. Claire stood there, framed by sunlight, wearing jeans and a loose cream sweater. Her hair pulled back like she hadn't planned to impress anyone. But she didn't have to. Just seeing her there sent my pulse racing. "Can we talk?" she asked. Her voice was careful, measured, like she was stepping across a minefield. I nodded, stepping aside. She walked in, the scent of her perfume trailing behind her, familiar and devastating. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, silence stretching between us until I finally broke it. "Why are you here?" she exhaled, rubbing her temple. "Because I can't keep pretending. That night, it shouldn't have happened, but it did. And I haven't stopped thinking about it." My heart jumped. "Then why are you running away?" "Because your mother," she said quickly, her voice sharp. "She trusts me. She sees me as family. Do you have any idea what it would do to her if she found out?" Her words were knives. But beneath them I heard something else, fear. Not disgust. Not indifference. Fear. I leaned forward, my hands trembling. "So what? We just keep lying? Pretend this isn't real?" She closed her eyes, pain flickering across her face. "It has to be that way." I hated her in that moment, hated her restraint, her refusal to let herself feel. And yet, when her hand brushed mine on the table, I couldn't stop the shiver that ran through me. "Claire," I whispered, desperate. "I don't care if it's wrong. I want you." Her eyes snapped open, blazing with conflict. "You think I don't want you?" she hissed, her voice breaking. "God help me, I do. But if we do this, there's no going back. We'll destroy everything." The silence that followed was unbearable. I thought she would get up and leave again. But instead she stood, walked around the table, and before I could breathe, her lips crashed against mine. This kiss wasn't hesitant like before. It was desperate, messy, almost violent in its hunger. I gasped against her mouth, clutching at her sweater as if holding her would make the world stop spinning. She pressed me back against the counter, her hands tangled in my hair, and for the first time I didn't feel guilt, I felt alive. When we broke apart, both of us breathless, she rested her forehead against mine. "This is insane," she whispered. "But I can't stay away from you." I smiled, tears burning my eyes. "Then don't." The weeks that followed blurred into a dangerous rhythm. Every stolen moment was fire. When Mom was at work, Claire would drop by to check in. We'd talk, laugh, and eventually give in to the pull that neither of us could fight anymore. We kissed in the kitchen, on the couch, once even in my bedroom, the door locked, our whispers drowned in the sound of our racing hearts. But with every touch came the shadow of fear. The guilt of betraying my mother. the constant risk of being caught, and the strange, unshakable thrill of it. One evening, as we lay tangled together on the couch, the TV murmuring forgotten in the background, I asked the question that had been gnawing at me. Do you love her? Claire stiffened. Your mother? Yes. Do you love her? My voice faltered. The way I want you to love me? Her eyes softened, but her silence was cruel. She's my best friend, she said finally. She's been there for me through everything. But no, I don't love her that way. Not the way I. She trailed off, her hand brushing my cheek. The way you what? I pressed. She swallowed hard, her thumb stroking my skin. The way I love you. The words shattered me. I kissed her fiercely, tasting both joy and despair. Because love was never meant to feel this forbidden. But secrets don't stay secrets forever. It happened one night when Mom came home early from work. Claire had been with me in my room, both of us laughing quietly under the covers like reckless teenagers. The sound of the front door opening froze us in place. Shit, Claire whispered, scrambling out of bed. My heart pounded as I shoved my hair into place, trying to look innocent. Claire slipped out the back door just as Mom knocked on my door. Hey, sweetheart, Mom said, poking her head in. I thought I heard voices. I forced a smile. Just talking to a friend on the phone. Her eyes lingered on me for a moment too long, suspicion flickering there. My stomach twisted. When she finally left, I collapsed against the door, shaking. This was getting too dangerous. And yet, the very next night, Claire was back. We were reckless and we knew it. But once love like that takes root, it doesn't care about rules or consequences. The more we tried to fight it, the stronger it grew. Until the night everything exploded. It was at a family barbecue in our backyard. Mom had invited half the neighborhood, laughter and music filling the air. Claire was there, of course, helping at the grill, charming everyone like always. I couldn't take my eyes off her. At one point, she caught my gaze across the yard. It was only a second, but it was enough. Too much. And unfortunately, my mother noticed. Her smile faltered. Her eyes narrowed. And I knew she was beginning to put the pieces together. Later, as the guests started to leave, Mom pulled me aside. What's going on with you and Claire? My throat went dry. What do you mean? Don't play dumb, she snapped, her voice low. The way you look at her. The way she looks at you. Tell me I'm wrong. I froze, panic clawing at my chest. But before I could answer, Claire appeared, holding a tray of empty glasses. She froze too, reading the tension instantly. Am I interrupting? She asked carefully. Mom's eyes darted between us, suspicion hardening into something sharper. No, she said tightly. We're just talking. But I knew. This secret wasn't going to stay buried much longer. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling with tears streaming down my face. I had two choices. Keep lying and risk destroying my mother when the truth came out, or confess and risk losing Claire forever. Neither option felt survivable. But I knew I couldn't keep living in the shadows. Not when love burned this bright. The following days were unbearable. Mom didn't confront me again. But I could feel her suspicion hanging in the air like a storm cloud ready to break. Every time Claire came by, I caught my mother's eyes lingering, studying us, noticing details we thought were hidden. The way my voice softened when I spoke to Claire. The way Claire's gaze seemed to follow me even when she pretended not to. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. My heart was trapped in a constant state of panic, yet I couldn't stay away from Claire. One night, when the weight of it all became too much, I called her. My voice cracked through the phone. She knows, I whispered. She hasn't said it, but I can feel it. There was silence on the other end before Claire finally spoke. Then maybe it's time we stop before it gets worse. The words cut me in half. Stop? After everything. I love you, she said quietly. God, you know I do. But this is tearing me apart. I can't look your mother in the eye anymore. Her voice broke. Maybe loving you is the worst thing I've ever done. I pressed the phone to my chest after she hung up, sobbing into the darkness. But the thing about love real, consuming love is that it doesn't die just because it should. The next week, Claire avoided the house entirely. She and my mom talked over the phone, exchanged files through email. My mother didn't question it aloud, but I caught her watching me like she was trying to solve a puzzle. I broke first. Late on a Friday night, I drove to Claire's apartment. The city lights blurred through my tears as I stood outside her door, knocking with trembling hands. When she opened it, her eyes widened in shock. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "I can't stay away," I said. My voice was ragged. "I can't breathe without you." Something inside her broke then. She pulled me inside, shut the door, and before I could speak another word, her lips were on mine. That night was different. There was no hesitation, no guilt holding us back. We gave in completely, like two people drowning and clinging to each other as the only salvation. We whispered promises we had no right to make, swore love into the air as if that could protect us from the world. When I lay in her arms afterward, my cheek against her chest, I whispered, "I choose you over everything, even her." Her breath caught. "Don't say that." "I mean it," I insisted. "If she makes me choose, I'll choose you." She kissed the top of my head but said nothing. And that silence told me she wasn't ready to believe me. The universe didn't give us much time. 2 days later, the truth finally shattered. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. Mom came home earlier than expected. I had invited Claire over, foolish enough to believe we could steal another moment. We were in the living room, sitting too close, hands brushing, when the front door swung open. My mother froze in the doorway. The tray of groceries she was carrying slipped from her hands, apples scattering across the floor. "What the hell is this?" Her voice was sharp, cold, but underneath it was something worse: betrayal. I shot to my feet, panic flooding me. "Mom, it's not. Don't you dare lie to me," she snapped, her eyes darting between us. "How long has this been going on?" Claire stood too, pale as paper, her lips trembling. "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think." Mom's voice cracked. "Oh my God. You. Of all people." Her eyes burned into Claire, and I had never seen her so angry. "You were supposed to be my friend." "Mom, please," I begged, tears already spilling. "I love her. I didn't mean for it to happen, but love." The word fell from her lips like poison. She turned to me, her face twisted with disbelief. "You're telling me you're in love with her? With the woman I trust most in this world?" I nodded through the tears. "Yes. I love her." For a moment, silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Then Mom shook her head, her expression hardening. "Get out," she said to Claire, her voice shaking. "Get out of my house. And don't you ever come back." Claire's eyes brimmed with tears. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Finally, with a broken glance in my direction, she left. The door slammed behind her, and the sound echoed through the walls like a gunshot. The days that followed were hell. My mother barely looked at me. When she did, it was with disappointment, anger, or worse, hurt. She didn't yell. She didn't fight. She just withdrew, and that silence crushed me more than anything else. I tried to explain, tried to make her understand. But every time I spoke Claire's name, Mom's jaw tightened and she would walk away. I felt like I was drowning in my own home. And Claire, she was gone. She didn't answer my calls, didn't reply to my texts. It was as if she had vanished, leaving me to rot in the aftermath. At night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment over and over. My mother's shattered expression, Claire's silence, the slam of the door. I thought I had lost everything. Weeks passed, and then one evening I found Claire waiting outside my apartment building. She looked different, tired, thinner, shadows under her eyes. But when she saw me, the same fire lit in her gaze. "I couldn't stay away," she admitted. "I tried. But every day without you feels like I'm bleeding." I rushed to her, throwing myself into her arms. We held each other on the sidewalk like two people clinging to life after a shipwreck. "I thought you were gone forever," I whispered. "I almost was," she said, her voice raw. "But I can't do it. I can't lose you." We kissed then under the glow of the streetlights, uncaring of the world watching. For the first time in weeks I felt alive again. But love doesn't erase consequences. When I returned home later that night, my mother was waiting for me in the living room. Her eyes were red, her face pale. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "I saw you," she said simply. I froze. "I saw you with her." Her voice trembled, but her gaze didn't waver. "And I don't know if I'll ever forgive you, either of you. But you're my daughter. I can't stop loving you." Tears blurred my vision. Mom, I never wanted to hurt you. But I can't stop loving her. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Then you've made your choice. And just like that, she stood and walked to her room, closing the door softly behind her. The sound was worse than a slam. It was the sound of a bond breaking quietly, without the dignity of rage. That night I curled up in bed and realized the truth. Loving Claire had cost me more than I ever imagined. But even in the wreckage I couldn't regret it. Because for the first time in my life I knew what it meant to feel something real. And I wasn't going to let it go. The house was quiet after that night, but silence didn't mean peace. My mother moved around me like I was a stranger in her home. The distance was unbearable, worse than any fight we could have had. And every time I tried to speak, she cut me off with a look that said more than words ever could. You broke something sacred and I don't know how to forgive you. But time is a strange healer. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Life went on in its cruel, ordinary rhythm: work, school, meals, and silence. And in those weeks, Claire and I tried to find ourselves again. We met in quiet corners of the city, her apartment, the small bookstore downtown where no one knew us. Each time we kissed, it felt both like salvation and like pressing against a bruise that refused to fade. One night, as we lay in her bed, she whispered the words I had longed to hear. I want to fight for this. For us. I turned to her, searching her eyes. Even if it means losing her? Her expression was broken but firm. I already lost her. I don't want to lose you too. The decision to come clean wasn't easy. But love built on lies doesn't last. And I couldn't keep living in the shadows. So one Sunday afternoon, I asked my mother to sit with me. She looked tired, guarded, but she agreed. The sunlight streamed through the windows, catching the dust in the air. And I felt like I was about to stand trial. I need you to listen. I began, my voice shaking. No interruptions. Please. Her jaw tightened, but she nodded. I told her everything. Not the details she didn't need to hear, but the truth. How I fell for Claire, how it scared me, how I tried to fight it and failed. How loving her wasn't some rebellion or mistake, it was the most real thing I'd ever known. When I finished, my throat raw, my mother sat in silence for a long time. Finally she spoke. Do you know what it feels like, she said slowly, to realize the two people you love most have been lying to you? Tears burned my eyes. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did, she snapped, and then her voice broke. God, you did. Her hands trembled as she pressed them to her face. For the first time I saw her not just as my mother, but as a woman betrayed, broken, struggling to hold herself together. I don't know how to accept this, she whispered. I reached for her hand, though she flinched. You don't have to accept it right now. Just don't walk away from me. Please. Her silence was my only answer. But she didn't leave. And that was enough for now. Weeks passed. The tension remained, but little by little, cracks formed in her wall. She started asking small questions about school, about work. Once she even asked if I'd seen Claire lately, though the words tasted bitter in her mouth. I answered honestly. Yes. Her eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing more. It was a start. The turning point came unexpectedly. Mom and I were at the grocery store, running into neighbors who chatted too long. Claire appeared at the end of the aisle, pushing a cart. The moment her eyes met mine, my heart skipped. But then she saw my mother and froze. For a long moment, the three of us stood there, an invisible battlefield between us. Then, to my shock, my mother spoke. Hi, Claire. Her voice was clipped, brittle, but not venomous. Hi, Claire whispered. She looked fragile, bracing herself for impact. Silence stretched. My mother's gaze flicked between us, and then she sighed. We need to talk. All of us. That night, Claire came over for dinner. The air was suffocating, tension thick enough to choke on. We sat around the table like unwilling participants in some cruel play. Finally, my mother set her fork down and looked straight at Claire. I trusted you, she said, her voice trembling. I thought of you as family. Claire's eyes filled with tears. I know. And I hate myself for betraying that. But I love her. I can't apologize for that part. My mother's expression wavered. Pain, anger, grief all tangled together. Then she turned to me. And you. You're my daughter. You should have come to me sooner. I was scared, I whispered. Scared of losing you. You almost did, she said quietly. The room went silent again. Then slowly she exhaled. I don't know if I can ever be okay with this. But I can't lose both of you. So if this is what you're choosing, then I'll try. For you. Tears blurred my vision. I reached across the table taking her hand. Thank you. Claire whispered. Thank you. Too, her voice breaking. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was hope. Months later, things weren't perfect. My mother still struggled. Some days she couldn't even look at us without her eyes clouding. But she tried. She let Claire come over again, though never without tension. She asked questions, listened, sometimes even laughed with us again. And slowly, painfully, healing began. On a cool autumn evening, Claire and I walked along the river, the city lights shimmering on the water. She slipped her hand into mine, and for the first time I didn't feel guilty. Do you think it'll ever be okay? I asked. She smiled softly. Maybe not perfect, but love doesn't have to be perfect to be worth it. I leaned into her, feeling the warmth of her body against mine. In that moment I realized something. We weren't just surviving. We were building something new. Something fragile, imperfect, but real. And that was enough. The world didn't end because we loved each other. My mother's heart didn't shatter beyond repair. Our lives didn't collapse. Instead they shifted. Hard, painful, awkward at times. But beneath all of it, love remained messy, complicated, forbidden, and yet the truest thing I had ever known. Looking back now, I don't regret it. I never thought I'd fall for my mother's closest partner. I never thought love could be both the most destructive and the most healing force in my life. But I did. And in the end, it didn't just change who I loved. Changed who I was. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.